So today's presentation, ArcGIS StoryMaps, URL parameters, custom domains, Python, automation, and more. They made a really long title this year. Last year it was just called Developer Tips and Tricks, and I like that one a lot better. And that's what it really is. It's really for power users and developers to get started with StoryMaps. We've got entry-level power user tips as you're in the builder to get started faster, write stories faster, and engage with your content in more interactive ways. But going all the way to advanced solutions that allow you to automate management with Python API, and even think about how you can use StoryMaps and the Esri developer APIs that are available to do something completely custom. Maybe not supported, but completely custom and kind of fit an organization workflow. Before we get started, just a reminder that we do have a survey in our events app, and we'd love some feedback at the end of the presentation. If you get a minute to fill that out, it really helps us out and can kind of gear this presentation for future years and what your expectations are to meet that. So Anikit's with me. He's one of our program managers at Esri. He works both on the StoryMaps team as well as our Survey 123 team. And he helped leads our DevOps side of things, making sure StoryMaps don't go down and making sure they're always available, making sure they scale no matter if they get 20 million views or immediately go to 150 million views in a single day because maybe there's a power outage and an organization's website has found their website has gone down. They direct all our traffic here within minutes. We can still make sure we meet the demand very easily. I'm Steve. I'm the lead developer on the team. I've been with Esri for almost 14 years. I've got a background both in cartography and web development, and it's been a lot of fun to see all the stories you have created over the years from early on downloadable. We've sent out a zip file. I think a couple of you have maybe seen that, and then all the way to classic story maps and our rebuild about 6 years ago to this brand new platform that has been increasing and just continuing to grow over the past 6 years. So for today's agenda, like I mentioned, we'll give a brief introduction for those of you that are new, what story maps are, quick tips for in the builder, different ways you can use URL parameters in your application, and then advanced ways you can embed your own content within story maps. Once you've created your story, how do you then share that or manage that? So we'll talk about our new script embed that we have, and also talk about our Python API to give different ways to automate and manage your stories. Finally, we'll give you a little bit of things you could think about at the very end of if you took custom development with our Esri platform, as well as a small look at the road ahead for story maps. So story maps, what are they? They are a platform that allows you, what we like to say, share your geographic content because we really like maps, but they also work really well if you don't have any maps at all. But it's a way to share engaging interactive stories with your audience to anyone around the world. We have purpose-built solutions from long-form immersive stories that allow you to guide your audience through a particular narrative to presentation-based briefings. Really slide-based, kind of similar to PowerPoint, but what takes them to the next level is you have the full interactive content that you might not get with PowerPoint, but you can still take them fully offline. You can take them on a tablet without any internet connection and have full interactive maps with you. We also have our collections, which allow you to compile a series of different content, whether that's multiple stories as a series by breaking them up into shorter stories, or you can bring in images or other maps to have compelling content all collected together in a single URL. And finally, we have our themes. Themes allow you to have your own organization branding apply to all of your content. We try to make themes really easy to build, but really powerful. And that's one of the main concepts we have around our StoryMap platform. Some of the items, we tend to take a more Apple-esque approach to it, where we take away the controls, and you may not have every little detail to move items here and there as you wish. But what we have found that actually allows almost everyone, unless you're purposely trying to make an ugly story, to make a great looking story that engages, that works well on every single device by putting some of those guardrails in place. But we still get away with allowing you to have organizational branding, logos where you want them, colors where you want them, custom fonts, and more. So this is a mostly developer conference. It's transitioned a little bit this year to be a more technical conference as well. And on the StoryMaps team, we do love developers. However, we're not a developer product. We're not intending StoryMaps to be a downloadable product where you can download the source code, modify it as you will, similar to some of the other solutions that are out there with web apps. We're also not a low-code platform. We're not going to allow you to write custom HTML and CSS in our online builders. And that comes for a lot of different reasons. Some of the main reasons are it hinders performance oftentimes, or it can also lead to security restrictions, especially for your audience if they don't understand the implications of what scripts they're running. And so we want to protect all the readers, especially the non-technical audience that we relate to. But beyond that, we have also found in some of our classic stories when we did allow that it leads to maintenance issues, where if you're relying on our own classes that we may change over time to make sure we modernize story maps, making sure we follow the best web practices, if you're relying on a piece of code in our application and we change that, it breaks your story. But we do have developer-friendly features to make it easy to engage and provide interactive content. And that's what this presentation is all about. How do you automate your story? How do you embed content in a way that you can actually control some of your embeds with sidecars to do things similar to map choreography? You can do it with iframe choreography, right? You can use our post message API to make sure your embeddable content sizes correctly. And we have a brand new script embed that allows you to host your story on your own custom domain on your own server. And if you wanted to have some of those custom analytics with Tag Manager, which is essentially custom scripts running, if you wanted to have custom fonts, if you wanted to have custom CSS to modify a few things, you can do that. And we'll show you some of that in this presentation. So let's get started kind of on the more beginner level. 5 quick tips that you can do with our story map builder. So here I have a story builder, and number 5, we're going to start with create links to other pieces of content within your story. Sometimes your story is not always linear, and you need to have a choose your own adventure and jump around to different sections, or you want to have a table of contents to allow them to navigate directly where they want to. If you have a lot of content, we have a navigation section, but we also give you the option to highlight and link. And one of those options, you can obviously link to any web page or app, but you can also link to any of the headers within your story. So in this case, I'll choose number 4, click it, and I can jump right there. Number 4, making sure your story is ready to be translated. Each story is available in one language right now, but you can set the story language on the item itself. So when a browser comes in, when a user comes in from a different language, oftentimes browsers will have this translation, automatic translation that they provide from the browser itself. If you set the language correctly, then they can have it pop up automatically. So that's done in the story settings. On this first display tab, scroll down and see language and regions. You can choose both your language as well as your date formatting and number formatting. Number 3, add author analytics. So we do have 2 analytic providers that you can choose from, both Google Analytics and Adobe Analytics. Adobe Analytics was one we added about 1.5 years ago by request from a lot of our larger organizations that wanted more advanced tracking. So engaging with your audience and understanding how your audience is using your story is really important to tailor how you're creating your story. So your story will work well on any device. We try to optimize it as much as possible. But sometimes, whether you have different images or different content, understanding what users are coming for your story, what devices they're coming from. Some users and some organizations will have almost 100% of their audience coming from desktop. So you can do more powerful applications, more rich interactives. But maybe you're finding that, like the average story map user, where 50% of your traffic is actually coming from a mobile device, tailoring your content to be a little bit more lightweight, on-the-go reading, lightweight interactions that you would provide for them. You can also understand where traffic is coming from. If news sites or other online resources are linking back to your website, you can understand that. So again, come to story settings, come over to analytics. You can enable analytics, choose from Adobe or Google. And then at the bottom, you also have an option to add your consent message to follow GDPR and other international regulations. Number 2, providing publishing options to make sure you tailor your story to be shared on social media platforms and how you want other authors to actually use and use your content. So when you click publish, we have this story details option, which allows you to edit your thumbnail, title, and description if you want something different to be shown on the thumbnail for Facebook and Twitter and others. We also have a couple other options. You can set your sharing level if you want it shared publicly or privately with just a group. You can enable duplication, allow others who have view access to your story to have, it's almost, in a sense, a lightweight template, allows you to start from that content and go from there. We do have a full template option that allows you to add additional notes and more, but if you just want a simple starter, you can enable duplication. And finally, this one at the bottom here, show in web search results. This will control the meta tags that get applied to your story. So if you want to disable search engines from scraping your content. What we have found, this is especially important if you are embedding your story as an iframe in a parent web page. Because story maps have such good SEO, we have actually found when an organization embeds our site, our story map will still show higher on most search engines just because it's a platform that has lots of other stories that have engaging content on it. And so you can disable that from showing up in a search engine so only your parent web page will show up in search engines. And number one, this is my favorite because I'm a developer and having an online editor, I really want my markdown tools. So you have full, obviously, rich toolbar if you want to use it, but you can also have all your quick markdown formatting if you're here to change headings, to do numbered lists and bullet lists, and even some quotes. Let me get to the right. So all those shortcuts, if you're not familiar with Markdown, can be found under that little question mark tab at the top. And we'll continue to add those as we have special blocks that would take advantage of them. All right, next up, URL parameters. We're going to keep cruising through this because we have a lot of content. We've got two main types of URL parameters. We've got URL parameters that you can use when you're creating stories. So to create a new story, you can do it by a URL, and you can prepend content to it if you would like to. So you can prepend a title, you can have a web map or a web scene automatically get started. One of our more popular ones is to apply a theme automatically. And so maybe you have a link, an internal link in like a SharePoint site to say, this is how you create a story map, and you can have it open a story that's automatically implying the organization theme so they don't have to find it in the design panel. That simplifies the process for the non-technical or the editors that may not be familiar with story maps. New this year, we've also added templates, and so you can also prepend a template ID. So if you have a workflow, maybe you're in a parks department, and you want every park to create the same story, you can send out a link, hey, click here to create a story about the park for this campaign. The template's automatically going to be applied and have a starting content for their story. So we also have some URL parameters for our viewer. The first one here is your organization login. If you have a private story that you're sharing internally within your organization, by default, if a user were to hit that URL, they would see the generic ArcGIS Online login screen. However, if you append the URL key with the URL key that comes from your organization, it will redirect you to your organization login page as opposed to the ArcGIS generic login page. Two others for viewing your story. If you want to have a standalone block, especially some of our immersive blocks, and you want to embed that to your content, hiding the cover or hiding the header, which you can also get from the embed code, will allow you to hide that on the display. And finally, autoplay. We've also seen a lot of users use story maps or briefings for a kiosk, museum kiosk or office kiosk. So you can have it in an autoplay mode, and if you have like a script, if the browser crashes for any reason, automatically restart it and have it automatically restart autoplay without any user intervention. That's a really helpful tool as well. So what that looks like, if I look at this example of a map tour, it's good, but if I were to embed this on a site and the user scrolls to the content, it looks a little weird. It's not quite the content I want. So I can append that query parameter, cover false, And header false. And now when I reload that same page, I've got that nice strict embed because maybe the parent web page is providing the title and additional context around that map tour. Crowdsourcing story maps. This is another fun one that we get that a lot of people want to do of how do I create a new crowdsourced story map. Within story maps itself, we don't have a way to collect information, but ArcGIS has a lot of different solutions for collecting crowdsourced information. One of our favorites is Survey123, especially one of Anikit's favorites is Survey123, right? It's a great way to create an interactive online form, and we have provided deep integration between Survey123 and story maps. So getting started, go to Survey123 and create the crowdsourcing form that you would want. So in this case, I have a very simple example of maybe a summer vacation photo contest. I've got a couple fields set up of the information I want to collect, their name, where they went on vacation, their category, and a place for them to upload their photo. Survey123 also has a lot of additional capabilities that allow you to pre-calculate fields based on other content. So in the case of if I've extracted information from the photo location or I have a place on a map, I can actually do a geocoding against that and get the city and state just to format the data automatically. There's also new AI tools for extracting data. One of the things you might have seen this year is if some of the employees in the expo are gathering feedback from you, they can scan your business card. It's in a survey, and it automatically will add in the contact information for you without having to type everything in and having typos. So I've created that, and within the map tour, so we'll create a crowdsource with our map tour in just a second. We provide a field for description. Now, if you want to have multiple fields show up, we don't have that capability built into StoryMaps yet, but we do allow HTML if you're using a feature service, a selected set of HTML within your feature service. So I have an automatic field calculation here within Survey123 to concatenate multiple fields together and join them with HTML, with rich formatting. Certain fields are being bolded, certain fields are being italics, use italics and more. So I'll come and create a new story. And we will add our map tour here. We'll start from a feature service, because this is going to be a crowdsource. We want live information. And we'll choose the feature service that Survey123 automatically creates for you. I've got a few sample photos that have already been created. We try to automatically detect fields for you. We don't always get it right because every survey is going to be different. So we can choose this edit data source to choose what we want for our title. And that description, this one, in this case, it's going to be that rich description. We have a couple different options you can choose from, whether or not you want your photos cropped, how many photos you want to show up per place, if you provide a way to upload multiple different photos, attribution fields, and alternative text as well. In addition, this is not quite for this crowdsource, but if you're creating a map tour with organization photos that are hosted on an internal media server, you can, instead of uploading as an attachment to the feature service, you can link it as a URL and provide a URL field to pull the media from. Finally, we provide a way to filter and sort your options to make sure the newest content comes up first, or if you want to only show like the top 25 or the top 200, you can do that. So we'll go ahead and save those options. Names have been adjusted. We can choose a different layout that might be more engaging or fit the content a little bit better. I'll probably choose this more map-focused one, but we do have a brand new categorized tour that was similar to our classic shortlist template that allows you to have different categories all on a map and sort them and see them in different colors as well. And let me actually click Save. So now as I scroll around, I see that nice content come through, that rich descriptions right there as I'd expect it to be. So how do I then engage the users that are viewing this site to ask them to create their own stories? Well, I'll come back to my Survey123 form and just copy the URL. Choose our embed block. paste it in. You don't have to find an embed code. For most services, you won't have to look for the embed code. We will automatically detect the URL you're trying to embed and find the appropriate embed code that they provide on their service. We have a third-party media provider that allows us to do that, and we can enhance it and understand the content in different ways to make sure we display it as best as possible. Certain content works really well in small areas like videos and photos. Sometimes web apps don't work as great there. Even though YouTube is a web app, we're still going to allow it where we allow videos to play. In this case, we have Survey 123. What you'll notice here is it doesn't look exactly like what I had in Survey 123. We automatically apply the theme matching your survey, and we automatically detect the height of the content so you don't have extra scroll bars. It just fits the content exactly as you'd like it, just to make it that much easier for you. As I change my design to a different theme, that survey automatically gets that applied theme to it. And so that's some of that messaging we're talking about. How do you engage with the story map in different ways? And how do you change the height to make sure it fits the content? You can have an iframe, which the Survey 123 is embedded as an iframe, look like it's native as part of the story. And that just kind of enhances the experience your readers will have. So how do you do that yourself? We've got a couple different options when you're using the embed block. So by default, all embeds will be 16 by 9, unless we can detect otherwise that they do provide different options. So a lot of third-party media providers, such as Twitter, YouTube, have a common post message API that they're using for embed providers. We're using that as well, and so it will actually message the height of the content to us that we can automatically resize. So if you have a really long tweet, for example, it will automatically detect that and fit the tweet where it's supposed to be. You can do that yourself just by adjusting the iframe codes. Most iframe codes have a height and width attribute that we're going to read, and I'll show you a couple different ways to play around with that. And then there's this post message API. If you had dynamic height, maybe you don't have a fixed aspect ratio. Maybe it's going to depend on the content at load time or the size of the device. If you have a mobile device, it's going to be much taller than if you have a widescreen desktop monitor. So you can use this post message API, which will be available in the slides afterwards as well, to message. It's a common post message API that if you're using other embed services, we copy. You basically tell us the URL of your iframe. This context is the event object that we're listening for, iframe resize, and then the height of the iframe that you want us to use as your display. There's two other tips that I want to mention here is custom attributes you can add to your iframe code. That's not normally there that we've added. By default, we will add an overlay to your iframes to make sure that users when they're reading through your story, if it's, say, a web page that has a long scrolling content, they don't get trapped in that secondary scroll, so we have that non-interactive content. It works for most things really well, and as the default, we want to keep it that way, but if you know you have a website, maybe it's an interactive chart or something that's a fixed content height that you want them to be able to hover over and engage right away without that extra click, you can choose this remove click to interact true. And I'll show you that in a minute on the iframe code itself, and that will turn it off by default. And also by default, while we keep a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, we will shrink that to the size of the screen if they have a shorter monitor to make sure the entire web page stays within the screen size. But you can disable that as well if you want fixed native height content. So let's look at a couple of those. So I will create a new story. And we're going to start with just a simple embed. And so we're automatically, you can paste the URL in here, but we automatically figure out the iframe code for you. Here's that click to interact button, so they can't automatically scroll. When they click on it, they get full interaction with it. I have a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. As I get bigger, it keeps that 16 by 9 aspect ratio until it gets so wide that in this case, the browser is short, so we have a maximum width. But if you had a really wide desktop, it would go wider. It's going to get shorter to make sure it always stays on screen. So here's an iframe code I've created. I've got that remove click to interact on there, and I hope this is showing somewhat big enough. And I've got this height constraint false, so I can make sure it gets the size I want. And a lot of providers out there that are giving you an embed code will provide these automatically, this height and width, and we respect that to make sure they fit really well. But you can use this to your advantage if you want to have a specific aspect ratio or a specific height. So for example, an audio player might have a set height that it always wants to be, but it doesn't care about the width of the screen. So if I have a 100% width and a pixel height, no matter what width I make my block, I'm going to keep that specific height set for my story. But let's say, for example, I know I have a specific aspect ratio for my content. I want square content. So in this case, I can just make sure the units, so in this case I'll have the percentage, both being percent. If the units match, then the width and height will be used as an aspect ratio calculation. So I now have that square aspect ratio, and so no matter what size I go to, it keeps that square aspect ratio and sized appropriately. Sometimes you don't know the height of your content, and this is where that post-message API comes in. Or maybe the height of your content changes as your users are interacting with the content. As you're embedding the site, you'll see this, it automatically shrunk up. We didn't have any of those height width parameters because the website, in this case, communicated via post-message what the height of the content was. As the content height changes, it can, again, use that post-message API to communicate to us what the height of the content is. So the caption doesn't get overloaded, the iframe doesn't have scroll bars, it just fits natively within the story itself. So that's a great way to make sure your iframe is sized correctly. But what happens if you want to control your iframe and kind of pass commands to it? You can do this via the sidecar. So as a performance optimization, both with maps but also with web pages, if you have the same URL or the same web map ID across multiple slides, we're not going to load a new map view or we're not going to load a new web page. We're just going to reuse the same iframe in that case. The one exception to the change that you can make is your hash on the end, because we're going to assume that it's going to be the same page. And so you can use a hash change event on your content to listen for a specific command if you want. So in this case, I'm messaging that I want a blue box to show up in the first position. And then I can create, so this is slide 1. And then let's add a new slide 2. And maybe I want to put a red box and expand it all the way across the screen size. So as I scroll up and down within that immersive section, I'm sending commands to that iframe to have it interact and do different things. So this is a really simple example of just moving a box around and changing colors with an animation. But imagine you want to walk someone through an advanced map view tour that has specific controls or stops or widgets that pop up. You could do that. You want to walk someone through a form and use the sidecar as kind of the instructions, and then the other web page would scroll to different sections as they're filling out the form. So you can use that hash control to do that. And so at this point, I want to turn it over to Anikit to talk about, now that you've learned how to embed content into story maps, how can you embed story maps into other web pages?
All right. Thank you, Stephen, for 5 fantastic tips. I guess we can quiz the audience later. So let's explore how we can host story maps on your custom domain or your own domain, as well as automate certain tasks using StoryMaps Python API. We just saw demo how can we embed various content within story maps. But now we are going to see how you can embed your story maps into your own website or on your own web page. But before we do that, let's see why we want to do it. Right, so some of the benefits are you can use amazing story maps blocks and immersive sections in a no-code fashion to embed in your own website. Right, you can use ArcGIS groups as well as StoryMaps unpublished change feature to have review and approve kind of workflow if that's what your organization wants. And the third and most important, once the story map is embedded, the author can still make changes without needing to help from any developer. So there are two main ways to embed story maps. iframe, we all have seen it, and as a web developer, you must have used it in past. But there is a new script embed method that we recently released. So if you use iframe, there are certain drawbacks. One of them is iframe is contained within the iframe itself, so it's insulated from the parent. So it's hard to pass any message or interact with that iframe. And second one, if you have tried embedding story maps on your website using iframe, the infamous double scroll issue that just doesn't go away quickly. So that's why we spend a lot of engineering efforts to create a new way of embedding via script. So when you use this embedding via script, I will show the demo how you can do it, but that inserts story in your page's DOM. So once it's part of a DOM, it's easy to customize and make it look like it's part of your website. So it's give a better user experience. So embedding via script not just enables you to put story within your web page. It also a solution to have custom domain. So since it's part of your web page, and your audience will never know it's a story maps as a different URL. They only see your web page. You can also add splash page if you want authors to give some information before they read your content. Right. You can also control a CSS or use custom or organization's font to match your entire website. You can also wrap your story with header and footer the way your other websites have. And you can also bring your preferred analytics. So we do support Google and Adobe out of the box, but if you have your own analytics, this is the solution for that. And on top of that, if you have premium content in your story, we automatically proxy it for you without you doing anything. And then at this point, we only support public story maps item. If you have any use case for private or org shared, we will definitely like to hear them. Okay, let's switch to demo. So this is a story that I would like to embed in my own domain. So right now you can see it's a storymaps.arcgis.com. It has its own item ID and path. But before you do that, let's see how you can enable advanced embedding, because it's not automatic. So I go to story setting, I go to advanced tab, and there is a checkbox saying enable advanced embedding. So if you enable it, you have to provide a domain, because we don't want your story that somebody else embedded, right? So it doesn't, it's a security risk as well as it doesn't sound right. So you as author has to allow that particular domain to be, so that your story can be embedded in. So I will just say example.com and just say add. And then once you do that, you have to save it. And like all the changes in story don't automatically get published. You have to click a publish button, and once the story is published, you can embed in your story into that domain. Let's see how it can be done. So here, this is my code. I'm gonna go to different domain just to prove the point. It's a CodePen domain. So this is the code. So it's a div which has, this is where your story will get embedded. And this is a script tag. It just have ID, where the scripts are coming from, and here you need to provide your story ID. So I want this story to be embedded. So I'm gonna copy this ID, paste it here, and if internet works, okay, which is working, you can see your story in your own website. Okay, so let's see, as I said, you can use the scripting by embed for multiple use cases. So let's see how can I do a custom font. So for simplicity, I'm just gonna show it in the story, but this is an embedded code pen. So so here I'm declaring two blocks. One is basically declaring a font as a Sigma, but I don't have access to that font. So that's the reason I need to go here and tell where this font comes from. It's a Google font, so you can see the body font has changed. So just for a comparison, this is my body font, and then I can get any font. So if it is Arc specific font, you can definitely link to that. And if you need to get a little bit more adjustment to the font, you can definitely use CSS style sheet. Okay, let's go to the next demo. So how can I add splash screen? It's not that challenging, but it has a really great use cases. So here I'm just declaring two different divs, one for splash overlay and another for story embed. It's the same similar embed, just a different story ID. And then here I'm going to use some CSS property and some script to actually do the splash screen. So now you can see a splash screen has been added. You cannot access your story content, whatever you do, you just have to click it. So if you have any disclaimer, if you have some information you want to give to your authors before they read story, you have to click the button, and now they can access your story. Okay, so now I'm deleting this content. So next, I would like to show how can you wrap your story with custom header and footer. So I'm putting this code here. It is basically creating a div with a logo which has header and another div with a footer, and then middle I'm gonna embed a story. But you can see there is no script embed tag for story. So just for as you can use HTML page, you can also use JavaScript file to embed it. So I'm just demoing that part. I'm just gonna give some pretty CSS. And now in the JavaScript code, actually I'm embedding the story. It's just a different way of embedding. It's the same script that's getting called. Now you can see you have beautiful header with some menu. You have story that I just embedded. And the end of the story, you can see the footer that I created. All right. So we recently launched this GitHub repo, StoryMaps developer samples. All the demos I showed here are there and much more over there, and we are planning to add much more samples as we see users are asking for it. And then if you have not used it, this is the QR code to get to that particular repo. All right, so let's. If you want to programmatically create your story, then ArcGIS API for Python is a way to go. So StoryMaps Builder is really great at creating immersive storytelling content. You have seen it, most of you have used it. But there is a use case where if you want to, via script, create a new story, or, take a backup of a story or archive a story, for various reasons, then ArcGIS Python API comes really handy. ArcGIS Python API supports all three major StoryMaps output: stories, briefing, and collection. You can create them, modify them, change them as you wish. It supports most of the blocks out of the box. So like image, video, audio, like embed blocks, text, some of the advanced block like sidecar, timeline, code, and now it supports the briefing slides as well. You can also change the cover of your story, and you can copy a specific block to a different story, or copy or duplicate the entire story. So I'm going to show two demos. One, we are going to craft a story from a report, and then the second demo I'm going to show is how we're going to translate briefing from one language to another. All right. So in my first demo, I'm going to use GenAI as well as story template to transform report into a new story. But before I do that, I would like to show these two case studies I pulled from the Esri's website. So this is first one, and this is second one. As you can see, this case studies has certain structure to it. There is an image about a business. There is details about the case study. There is a title. There are a few paragraphs, and there is a quote, and there is a logo of this particular organization we are doing case study on, as well as a link to read more. So based on that, I created a template. So this is a great use case for a template. So I created this template with an image placeholder for that particular image about the organization. Then title, so details about my case study, the placeholder for logo about that business, paragraphs, the code block, and here I'm going to insert the link that I'm going to extract from PDF. So let's go over the code. So I'm just loading the dependencies that I need, as well as declaring my Python API connection. So here I'm going to load the PDF, Chick-fil-A PDF that we just saw. And in this loop, I'm going over that PDF. I'm extracting the images, like the business image as well as logo, so that I can put that back into new story, as well as I'm creating an image for entire PDF. The LLM I'm going to use, ChatGPT, doesn't understand PDF through the core API yet. So I have to convert into image so that I can send it to LLM. And you will see how I'm going to extract text from that LLM. So now I'm declaring ChatGPT, and this is the prompt. So this prompt is particularly tailored for my case study that I'm going to extract. So I'm extracting the title, details about the case study, few paragraphs, code block, as well as link. So, and then I'm asking ChatGPT to return into JSON object. Now I'm going to run this code, which actually I'm going to send this prompt as well as the image I created from my PDF. And now you can see the ChatGPT return you extracted text in a JSON format. It has title, details about the case study, paragraphs, code, and link, all the details we really wanted. Now I'm going to use ArcGIS Python API to duplicate a template, because we don't want to change the template, right? So we want to duplicate a template, and then in the next block, I'm going to replace the text and images which I scrapped from the PDF of my report or a case study, as well as the response I got from the ChatGPT. So it's executed, and now I'm going to save that. It will take a second, and once it is saved, I can click on this. It will take me to the item page on ArcGIS Online. Here I can see it is created today, and it's created by me. And if I click edit, it will take me to the ArcGIS StoryMaps website, and you can see all the details from that particular case study is transferred to story. You get a title, you got an image, you got the details about case study, logo, and then paragraphs. So if you haven't worked with templates before, this is our instructional block, which tells about what you need to do with this particular template. But when you publish it, it doesn't, carry it over to a story. And then the link which we extracted from the PDF file. So that's first demo. Now move on to the second one. Okay, so this is second demo. I'm going to translate my briefing from English language to Spanish so that I can reach my wider set of audience in their native language. Before we do that, let's look at the briefing. So this is a briefing we're going to translate. And then what is briefing? A briefing is basically a slide-based presentation that you can create within StoryMaps. We can use briefing for live presentation like I'm doing right now. You can share it online through just a link, or you can take them offline. So these are some of the advantages of briefing. And then just for time's sake, there are many advantages of using briefing, but just to keep it short, I just put one advantage. But if you want to play with the briefing or like to know more, definitely come to our booth and I'm more than happy to demo it for you. So going back to script, I'm declaring dependencies. And now I'm going to read the briefing in ArcGIS Python API. The biggest advantage of using ArcGIS Python API, it natively understands the briefing slides, all the blocks that we support, like text or code or image or map, whatever it is. So I'm gonna use that functionality, go to each block and read the text or extract the text from that particular block. If it is image, I don't want to extract anything. If it is a map, I do not want to extract that content. But if it is a text block, I want to extract it. So that's what it's happening over here. And then once I get to extracted text, I'm gonna just save it as a JSON file and print it here for you. So I got a cover which has byline and summary and title. This is my slide 1. You can see this is a briefing, details about it. And in the second slide, the third slide, you got all the text extracted. So now I can use LLMs or any of the translation services that's available outside to translate it, or you can just send this JSON to your colleague or your friend to translate it. I'm not doing it here just to keep the demo simple, but it's not a humongous task to just translate it automatically. So I send it to my friend, it translated into Spanish, and I'm gonna print it back here. So now you can see the exact same JSON in English and in Spanish. So now I'm going to again use ArcGIS Python API to duplicate my original briefing, since I'm gonna create a new briefing in Spanish. So created that. Now I'm going using the same similar code to go over all the slides and all the blocks and replace the text from English to Spanish. Since it's in a JSON format, it's not that difficult to do it. And once that is done, I'm gonna save the briefing, but instead of now, I'm gonna say publish equal to true. This is one of the parameter which either creates as an item or let you create, complete the publishing process of your StoryMaps. And now I'm gonna directly open this in StoryMaps. And now you can see it's finishing the publishing because I said publishing is really true. And now you can see the same briefing in Spanish. So you can see this slide in English as well as in Spanish. All right, so yeah, I will hand it back to Stephen. No, thanks.
All right. So a lot of content, a lot of cool things you can do with StoryMaps. Those are kind of all in the supported range of StoryMaps. If you reach out to us on community, we'd be happy to help you. But Esri also has a really great developer platform. Organizations also at times have custom workflows, custom things you want to do with it, custom displays, different ways you want to manage it. Almost all the APIs that we use on the StoryMaps to download content, read content, edit and publish content, they're all publicly available APIs via Esri's developer platform. And so just have a couple samples here that could inspire you of what you could do with that platform. So on our side, we've got a Chrome extension that we use internally within the StoryMaps team. We use this kind of for debugging purposes when we're creating new story blocks. How do we create new block data before we even have a block editor, right? And so you might have seen this little white arrow hanging out here on the side. This is part of our Chrome extension that allows us to immediately see, debug, and find the published draft data, item details, item resources that go along with your story. And we can see that without going to additional tools like ArcGIS Online Assistant, we can see it all inline, so it's have a much faster debugging experience for our team. In addition, sometimes we want to have custom data or change things on the fly. We've got some keyboard shortcuts that bring up an overlay. I can see the data just for that one particular block and choose to edit that one particular block and save it back. And without using the builder, just by editing JSON, we can customize our story. So these are just simple APIs we're using to update the item data, update the item details, upload custom item resources that you can do just with the REST API, or even with the JavaScript SDK, the Python API, or more. It also gives us additional statistics that we can see for our story, how many of each type of block is in there, who owns the content, what language it's in, and things like that. This is kind of just another fun one we've been playing with. So story maps are just items in ArcGIS Online. Why not be, and most items in ArcGIS Online are just a collection of almost files, if you will, once you finally get down to the root of it. What if you could just bring all those files locally? Well, you can do that. You can just download the content, download the resources locally. We created a simple script here that allows you to download all the item data, item details, and the resources from your online content, bring it into your file system. I now can edit the code via a VS Code as opposed to like an online ArcGIS Online Assistant editor or something like that. But because they're just files, I just hooked up Git to it, and now I've got version control for story maps. And so that I can roll back to a previous version of my story. The image that you see here is going to be the same content that you see in my VS Code extension file, and the same content that I've got all the images. So maybe instead of having the image editor within story maps, you want to have a custom edited image. You can open it up in Photoshop or something similar because you now have access to the raw image as well there. Once you finish making your changes within the file system, you can then run export to push that back up to the story map. And so these are just using the same save item processes, just to inspire what you could do if you start thinking about custom workflows. So that's most of the content we have for today. We don't have time for a full road ahead session at this conference, but you're here. So let's talk about a couple of the fun things that we have coming for story maps. First off, we have infographics. Infographics are a great way to engage your audience and really highlight important information that they might quickly scan by to make sure they see it. So we've got a couple versions that we'll start with, such as like a word cloud, big numbers, and we'll slowly add more infographic types in the future. We have also been around for 6+ years now with the new platform, and we have issue checking built into the publishing process to make sure as you publish your story, all the items are shared correctly. We're going to automatically proxy the content if you have premium layers and things like that. But sometimes over the years, things start to degrade a little bit. Maybe a server goes down, a custom server goes down, or a colleague unshares the content unexpectedly. The new global issue checker will allow you to scan all of your content at once and check for all of your issues without individually going into each of the item pages. AI is big and fun, and we want to support AI on our platform as well. We want to really be careful about how we incorporate AI. We don't want to just generate stories on the fly because, I mean, what's the point of that? I mean, part of the value of stories is to really understand the geographic content, have the rules behind it. And so what tools are we building for AI? We're going to have AI insights to really enable and come alongside you as the author to speed up, improve your story, and make sure you're not missing content, such as automatically finding areas where you're missing accessibility, alt text or transcripts, and say, hey, do you want us to apply that content automatically because we can visually inspect that photo and see what's in it. Obviously, we're going to keep you in the driver's seat and make sure you know what's happening as we're making changes and making sure you see what changes are happening. But we want really quick, easy, actionable insights that you can quickly click on, see the change, and speed up your workflow. From the story maps team, you really see story maps as the hardest part of telling the story is coming up with the story and crafting the story itself. The authoring process should be as simple as possible. So AI is just going to enable that and take it to the next step further. And we'll even help you along the way to kind of think through that story to make sure you're the story you're crafting is actually meeting the intended audience. So if you're, for example, creating a story for an elementary class, right? And you write your story, and then we'll have an AI insights that say, hey, this reading level is really like a college level reading level. Is this actually what you intended? And kind of help you with those little tips and tricks along the way. From the StoryMap side of things, we are a global company. We support multiple different languages, and we know many of the organizations also support several languages, and the story you tell has to be supported in multiple languages. That browser extension that allows you to automatically translate is great, but sometimes that doesn't fit the requirements from your organization, and we know that, and we're listening. So we're going to allow you to quickly connect multiple stories together, and when you set your story language on each of those stories, we'll detect that, and when a reader comes in a different language, if you have another supported language connected to your source story, we'll automatically redirect to that translated story for them. Finally, expanding the scope of what story maps are. We've got long-form stories, we have briefings, and coming soon we're going to present a short-form story platform. Maybe similar to like Instagram stories, but really the idea behind this is craft a story within minutes if you want to. Obviously, you can take more time if you need high requirements, but the idea is you can craft it within minutes and you can share it anywhere. Think of purposes like emergency response, where the fire is changing. I've got to need a new report that I send out very quickly. I've got full interactive maps within ArcGIS StoryMaps. I've got simple graphics, and I can share it on social media so constituents can be aware of what's happening. Or maybe I just want to share photos of a family vacation very quickly, add it on a phone, and share it with my family. We've got lots more things coming soon. We're released every 3 weeks, and we want to constantly hear from you what's working, what's not working, so we can adjust on the fly and meet your requirements. So that's what we have for today. We've got a couple minutes for questions. I know we had a lot of content, so we don't have a lot of time. I'll be up here afterwards if we don't get to your question, but is there any questions that I can answer today?
Can you bring up the QR code again?
QR code, yep.
Yeah.
Is that extension available for public?
The Chrome extension is not, it's privately available right now. Give us feedback of what your expectations are and what you want to use it for. One of the things we're working on internally within our team, over the next couple weeks, is to think about how we do data validation. So if you edit the JSON, we can actually tell you the block does not support it, so you don't corrupt your story. And so that's something we want to add before we open it up more.
Yeah, look at change the organic for a button or something that's been created or have access to the user interface. It has a rate.
Well,
Another QR in the presentation.
There was a second QR code.
oh, okay.
That.
Yeah.
Aha. So the Chrome extension, well, it does allow you to edit it. You will still need the permissions to edit the story. So if you can't edit it via the online interface because you don't have permissions, the Chrome extension still won't allow you to edit it.
There's no option to change something, even if you're the owner.
Okay. Why don't we can talk afterwards about that.
Are all those features also for the enterprise version of StoryMaps?
Yeah, so the question is, are all the features that we support on ArcGIS Online supported on ArcGIS Enterprise? 99% of the features are supported on Enterprise for the most part. ArcGIS Online StoryMaps, if you want to see how they're architected and why there's changes, we've got a session in a couple hours if you want to attend that. But Online is a fully hosted version. It has a back-end system that supports additional APIs, so we can optimize a few things. But we are rolling all of our features out from Online, and then once we hit Online, the next release of Enterprise will include those features as well. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming. If you have any additional questions or comments, you can meet us up here.
Thank you.